Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about cloud computing at the defense environment and at DHS. I'm going to throw it over to Matt. We're talking about specific programs that we'd like to highlight. Matt, I'm sure you have a wealth of those. Give us one that you'd like to highlight that has really, you've seen sort of enable some fantastic capability.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about it just because of the sensitivity of it. Obviously, talk about it a little bit generically. We'll say this is within,
of course,
within the DoD. It's about as specific as we'll get. We've worked with this specific agency for a number of years now. And what they've done is they've taken a very cloud native approach to how they're developing their applications. And what they've done is they've really standardized around Docker, so with containers and Kubernetes. Mm-hmm. And what they've found is that by taking this very modular approach, as I think it was John who mentioned before, heavy use of infrastructure as code, heavy use of containers, they have very much made it so that getting the authorizations and meeting the federal standards, those are push button. I love the way John said it, push button, get banana. That is an amazing, simple way to think about it. But we worked with this agency for a time now, and they have been able to move so much quicker. And, we've mentioned, I think, Docker and Kubernetes before, really just how they are pivotal and a key part of cloud native architectures. But, an interesting point here is, one of the teams that I lead at Palo Alto Networks is our Unit 42 Cloud Threat Intelligence team. And they recently published a piece of research where they studied literally hundreds of thousands of third-party containers. And what they found is that 96% of those containers deployed in the cloud infrastructure contain known vulnerabilities. 96%. Wow. So although, containers as a technology, Kubernetes, they are amazing and they allow organizations, they let federal agencies be extremely agile and quick. One thing that organizations have to make sure that they embed is the whole concept of shift left security, where if you have developers that are creating new cloud native applications for you, that you make sure that you are enabling those developers to be able to create those applications securely. A lot of times, Luke, the security focus doesn't come until the application is already built and it's getting ready to be released into production. Mm-hmm. If you wait to that point in time, you've really given up a lot of the capabilities, again, that John and Paul were talking about, because cloud native applications, they're declarative. That means I can look at the code and I can know exactly what they're going to do before they're even launched. You have an ability to inspect those from a security perspective and find those vulnerabilities and misconfigurations. So we've worked really closely with a number of agencies around doing just that, but we're still fairly early in this game.
Frightening statistic there, and something that we certainly want to keep an eye on. Paul, you top-lined a lot of capability for, quite frankly, a very young agency. Give us an example of a specific program that you'd like to highlight for the listening audience.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll give you two.
Sure.
So one, yes, a small agency, pretty young. We've only succeeded with partnerships across the Army. That was kind of the key thing coming in, is like the only way we're going to be able to do this is to be able to find other people that want to do something a little bit different and have an impact. One of those early partners was Army Futures Command, the software factory that stood up, was an initiative around how do we get soldiers. We talked about people being our most important asset, but how do we get soldiers who understand how the cloud works, what the value of software and data is, and start to have them start to control a little bit of their future and solve problems for soldiers by soldiers. And so a major partnership there, where the software factory is now in their second cohort of training soldiers. So they've got already 5 product teams that stood up from the first cohort, and we've got 5 more product teams coming online here shortly. And we partnered in the creation and utilization of what we call the Create environment, but it's the Army's first enterprise DevSecOps ecosystem that facilitates how people are going to be designing and building and then fielding and then continuously enhancing the value of software in the hands of soldiers, in incorporating DevSecOps practices and principles across our development teams, our security, cyber professionals, as well as our platform operations teams. And so I want to highlight them. Great partner, just simply demonstrating just a new way of doing business, but more importantly, just how important it is for us to understand how software and systems shape and change the way that we can do business. I just want to pause and just highlight, I'm super thankful for Palo Alto on here, for Snowflake on here, as well as ServiceNow, because together you have this focus on security, data, and workflows. And when you talk about combining those three together, they can be absolutely transformational. The other one I want to highlight is an initiative born out of 18th Airborne Corps, what many may know as Project Bridgeway. But a similar kind of effort where Forces Command wanting to lean in and truly become practitioners of data and services for the way that they solve problems. And that was all born out of a message to me on CVR at the time from a young captain that said, hey, I don't know if the Army is okay with me messaging you directly, but I want to deliver tactical cloud as a service to the Army. And that blew up into just amazing transformational change, where just recently they ran their Scarlet Dragon ecosystem as part of an online exercise entirely enabled by a cloud capability. Just fundamentally changed the way that we look at opportunity and change the way that we do business. So there's two for you, Luke, of some initiatives I'm really proud of.
Amazing. It sounds like the Delta Force of DevSecOps. It's pretty incredible and very impressive. Aaron, how about at ServiceNow? I know you have a ton of use cases out there that you all have been involved in, all this activity that's been going on with COVID, et cetera. Give us an example of one that you'd like to highlight for us.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Luke. We mentioned people being really the center of where service is driving in cloud computing going forward. So one of our favorite examples, and I'd love to mention today, is what's called ARMA, which is the Army Housing application that was built on ServiceNow. This is an issue that back in 2019 made it all the way to the floor of Congress, right? Issues with enlisted housing on base and just the conditions and the ability to, or lack of ability to report, and the frustration. If you think about it, the well-being of our soldiers extends to our families as well. And so this was a major issue. Very honored to know that ServiceNow was chosen to build an application not only to be deployed globally, which 10 years ago was not capable of doing it in a short order, but we also deployed it in less than 3 months. So now you have soldiers and their families able to use their mobile devices to take pictures of issues, report the claims actually get followed up on. The metrics have been incredible, thousands of hours are saved, morale is improved. And we're just extremely proud to know that we have changed the lives of the servicemen and women that are protecting our country. And it seems small to solve something like that, but it's got such big impact to each individual that it's really been something that, we couldn't be more proud to partner with the Army on, and it's been a big success.
No question. I mean, just these, I don't want to even call it simple because it's much more comprehensive of that, enabling, some capability and whether it's the service member themselves, their families, daily lives is a big deal, right? I really do appreciate that. Richard, how about at Immigration and Customs Enforcement? You top-lined a whole bunch of things there. Give us an example of one program that you'd like to highlight for us.
Well, Luke, we have an investigatory data analytics program that is doing a ton of stuff that I don't think we ever would have come close to being able to do if it was not for our movement into the cloud. CIO caught wind of an operational unit that was planning on taking a bunch of dilapidated old servers from a closet somewhere and standing up a little skunk work project down in a field office. And
sounds very scary.
We caught wind of this and, we're able to partner, and they were one of our early significant presences in the cloud. And it was really that partnership and the work together that we were able to break through on truly a large number of very sensitive data access requirements. By centralizing it, by moving it together, as Stephen, as John talked about earlier, I believe. Oh, I'm sorry, no, it was Stephen, with centralizing the data, making it more available was a capability that was lost in a lot of ways. I think this, was huge for us, and it really expanded our ability to stretch the limits of what we could do, and provided much greater analysis for our users.
Yeah, taking advantage of that capability, that technology that's available, ensuring the security of it, and then enabling and unlocking that capability to your operators. That sounds like a win-win-win. Stephen, how about at Snowflake? Lots of examples there. Give us one that you'd like to highlight.
Yeah, probably the most glaring, and this is kind of across federal, it really touches everybody, was a lot of the stuff we did with COVID-19 data. Very early on, I mean, you think about there was, a lot of collection going on, but not much interaction because things are happening, real time. And so we were able to set up, through data exchange and data marketplace concept, being able to allow researchers, scientists, pretty much anybody doing it to share that data, expose that data, so they could do, research, reporting, analytics against that in real time as it was being collected in some cases. And so that was kind of a game changer. Like, you didn't have to FTP it somewhere. You didn't have to send an email with a spreadsheet and all that stuff. They were just collecting it where they were and then allowing that data to be accessed. And so as a result of that, we've seen a lot of interest in that capability in the federal healthcare space. And frankly, a lot of that kind of bleeds over, and you think about, interaction with the states. And if you think about, like, I'd use an example like Medicaid services, for example, every state kind of has their own way of doing it, right? There's not one way of doing it. And then you have CMS and then HHS. And, how do you, you're not going to go into each state and necessarily tell them how to do it, right? Necessarily. But what you do need is the data. And so that data sharing capability, and I come back to that theme because that's really what the cloud enables, in a way that, you don't have to do data movement, right? I can still do it in a secure way, but now I can deliver things to the consumer faster, right? And a lot of these cases, the consumer is the citizen, but you could think about some of those transposing into things like working with the VA, right? Delivering, things for veterans. We're coming up on Veterans Day, and veterans healthcare, for example, is a way that some of these capabilities can be transposed over into doing those things in rapid succession. But a lot of that was really, a lot of lessons learned from how people were using that as part of, like, the COVID-19 response to be able to share that data. And so even with the Army, for example, really any DoD, when you're working with, like, federally funded research centers, or, university, federally funded research or university affiliated research, things like that. It's really a force multiplier in a way to accelerate, deriving the value out of that data.
Being able to share it, ensuring that there's an architecture, aka zero trust, so that you can maintain the integrity of it, extremely powerful. Well, I want to talk about top priorities. Paul, let's start with you. No question that you've got some things on the deck. You touched on 2022. What are those priorities looking like for this year and the coming year?
Yeah, so like John talked about, our ability to expand the availability of online on-demand computing resources globally is really important. Understanding data sovereignty laws and some of the constraints that and also the law of physics kind of does to us when it comes to access to cloud computing is really important. So understanding our on-premise architecture in context of, an off-premise, public resource is really important. So I see a lot of 22 focusing on truly what that hybrid architecture looks like and needs to look like for the DoD. And I think he understates it, just the value of DISA reorganizing themselves around the CCPO, the cloud initiative, as well as the on-premise initiative, that all of these resources need to be seen as kind of a pool of resources when we're starting to dive into the definition there. So I think there's going to be a lot of that investment, a lot of that collaboration. I also think in the flavor of zero trust, there's going to be a lot of work across the DoD when we start talking about identities and personas, not just of people, which I think is the easy one that most people can wrap their heads around, but also the identities of our services, the applications, our data sets, not just the devices and the users that we're so accustomed to. Because I really don't think that any conversation around zero trust should be happening unless you're also talking about the data itself. Far too often I see zero trust focusing on, people and devices and not caring about non-person entities and data. And I think that that's a foul. So I think there's going to be a lot of work around that. And I also think there's going to be a lot of work around now, how do we extend kind of this software-defined ecosystem from a zero trust perspective, then globally on top of those cloud computing resources? That's where I kind of think the whole entire DoD is going to be focused in. For the Army specifically, we're trying to scale the value of cloud computing to the total Army. And so how might we, is kind of the key question in the sense of delivering capabilities in a different way, leveraging cloud to its greatest extent. And we've put a number of enterprise contracts in place, and we've got a few more coming this year that'll really, from an acquisition perspective, put key tools into the hands of everyone across the United States Army, and dare I say across the DoD, when it comes to access to how we buy cloud computing, how we build and secure capabilities within the cloud, and then how we deliver data and services in a fundamentally different way, depending on whatever mission area we're in.
Sounds like you're really laying the tracks down there. Going to be a very active 2022. Matt, how about at Palo Alto Networks? Top priority for you all this year?
Yeah, I would say that, as we look at FY22, some of the big things that we're focused on is continuing to educate the, all of our customers, commercial and federal, around not only the advantages of moving toward cloud native applications, but also the fact that, you need to be keenly aware of the risks that they bring. There's always that two-edged sword, right? With opportunity also comes risk. So that's one of the big things for us. And we continue to do that through our threat research, which we publish very regularly. You can see any of that by just going to unit42.paloaltonetworks.com. You can see all that research. The second piece I would say is that there, I think, is still a low sense of awareness around specifically the complexity of cloud native supply chains. A lot of times we talk about the supply chain, we think in terms of the physical supply chain. And we've certainly talked about that for a number of years. So a big priority for us as we look at 22 is putting together that two components. So cloud native supply chain security with also zero trust on it, right? And as Paul mentioned, any complete zero trust architecture has to take in not only identity, the asset itself, but also the data. So that is absolutely a key component. So as I mentioned in previous years, it's not that the concept of zero trust is new, right? It's been around for many years, but actually putting that into practice, this is where we're seeing organizations, federal specifically, really looking how they can bring those two together. So those are some, I think, some big focuses for us as we move into 22, both the educational component as well as helping our customers to implement zero trust around the cloud native supply chain.
No doubt 2022 going to be the year of zero trust, if you will. The executive order, I think, highlighted it, mentioned it 11 times. So going to be a very active year in regards to that. All right, we're going to take a short break and we'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network.